Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful Rabbit Hole, Lauren Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. I actually just finished Bayonetta 3 like a couple of hours ago, and I really wanted to stop what I was doing and make a review immediately because I really do have a lot of things to say about it. But in true Cody Lee fashion, I ended up just I was streaming and I ended up switching over to Persona 5 and going through the first 2 hours of that, which has been great so far. I'm really impressed with Persona 5. If anything, I want to talk about Persona 5 at this stage. But I do think it's high time to kind of talk about like Bayonetta 3 and like what I think about it now that I've like completed the game, have a general idea of what the game is and what you can expect from it and how it stacks up against the others. And my opinion is kind of complex because I feel as if a lot of hardcore action game fans, people who play stuff like Godhand, Ninja Gaiden Black, the original Bayonetta, people who play like the true peak of the franchise of action games might be a little disappointed with this one. But I think like gamers, people who enjoy like fun action and action packed like romps are going to have a great time with this. So essentially, I think Bayonetta 3 might have a problem having the same longevity that the original had because I'm not sure the game is as technically complex. I'm not sure it has like the same replay value. I don't think it's going to have the same appeal, like going back and replaying it over and over and over and over again, like the original does. But on the other hand, it is so jam packed with crazy moments, crazy weapons, crazy set pieces, and insane ideas, wonderful boss fights. It's really hard to kind of find fault with it. Unlike 2, which in a lot of ways felt like a stripped down version of what the original had, 3 feels like an evolution where it tries to do something radically different in the sense where it gives you full control of the demons you summon the character summons in battle. So much like Astral Chain or the unreleased Scalebound, Bayonetta can summon demons whenever she wants, and it's not just a handful of them either. Essentially, every demon you encounter in the game, like which I believe there's probably at least 10. There's probably more than that. You can summon all of them, from like demon trains to giant crows to Gamora. Like you get a wide range of like really cool summons that have a lot of utility and a lot of cool, interesting powers. The thing is, I really liked the idea of the summons. I really like using them, but because of the way the game is structured, you end up or at least what I did, I ended up sticking with the summons that I was good at and didn't really have a lot of chances to use a lot of the later ones, especially because of like the way the tree skill system works, in which you have to like use you have to level up each individual demon so it's like on par with like the demons you already have. So it comes off a little bit like the game could have been. I don't think there's a reason for the skill tree system to exist, honestly. Like I liked the idea of it at first, but like in practice, it comes off as just I would rather the all your skills and utilities just be there from the beginning and then you just master them. The game is just so complex. It feels like going through the entire game, the most time you'll ever spend with the game is you're going to be your first sitting when you're going through the story, right? I've spent like 5 hours a day playing the game since it came out. The first time you'll be playing the game, you'll be like learning the mechanics and learning the moves and stuff like that. But the moves aren't available from the get-go. So like again, you're unlocking items, you're unlocking new weapons, but you'll find that the skills aren't unlocked yet, and you have to spend like an exorbitant amount of dosh of cash to to get them leveled up. And the thing is, this game has like for some reason has like 3 different cash systems. It has like a Halo one, it has like a Demon Orb one, and it has like a Chaos one. So essentially, like it's gone past the 3 reality thing, and now you have like 3 different currency systems, which just makes the entire like thing kind of confusing. Because I, for a good long while there, like I noticed that I wasn't getting any new Halos at all, and like the in-story reason for this is that like you're just not fighting Angel at all throughout the entire game, and that's one of the things that I really had a problem with going into this is like Bayonetta was supposed to be about like a witch and her like endless war against angels. And one of the things I had a problem with when it came to the trailer is that like, well, where are the angels? Like we're not seeing any angels. We're seeing these like homunculi things, but like there are no angels. And the weird thing is, the entire the entire game is like that. Unlike two, in which like you're fighting demons and angels throughout the entire thing, you're basically fighting homunculi throughout the entire ordeal. Like sometimes angels show up and you fight them, but like they just feel like cameos and like a completely different adventure. It's weird. It's off-putting. Like I found myself wondering, like, what exactly are the demons and angels doing? Like I think the in-lore explanation is that like angels and demons are like relatively leaderless and have no like way to fight back against this onslaught from like the world of chaos, the world of humans, the multiverse, and they're just kind of like don't have the capacity to understand what's going on. But like it just seems like a missed opportunity, right? Like I think in a lot of ways that the three does not build off the first two all that all that well at all. And of course I felt the same way about two. Two felt like a really asinine sequel in a lot of ways, where like you have a completely different god character coming out of nowhere and like beating the crap out of Bayonetta after she had beaten the crap out of like the one true god in the in the original well Jubileus. The one true god Jubileus in the Bayonetta universe. I felt like in two it was a step down. Like I never felt intimidated by Lapter. I don't even really understand his plans or his motivations or his ideals or like why he was able to like beat up Bayonetta. Like two felt like a cop out to me in a lot of ways. I did not care about anything that happened in two. The only thing that I really enjoyed about two was really when it tied back to one. If anything, like if I took anything away from Bayonetta two, it's that like I really appreciated how much work they put into one. Like that's kind of my take on Bayonetta 2 is that like it made one so much more special to me. And because I hated 2 so much, I really expected 3 to be more of the same. And it's really not. Bayonetta 3 is a wild romp from start to finish with crazy set pieces and just really well designed, interesting, unique mechanics that just feel really fun to play for the most part. Again, one of my problems with the demon summoning, it's a lot of fun in combat, but with Bayonetta 3, you have situations where like there are a lot of demons where you just kind of use them like situationally, and like you feel like sometimes that they would never be practical in like an actual combat situation. Like when I remember when I first got Ball, like she's a toad, right? So you're having her like hop around on platforms and like messing things up. And you have like Malphus the crow from the first game. He's back, and like you can have him like go around like carrying weights and stuff like that. It's an interesting usage of the powers and stuff like that, but I couldn't help but feel like because of these demon summon powers, because the entire game was designed around them to use them in almost every situation except for when like you're in cramped corridors. Most of the areas in this game are like gigantic. They are large, and it really comes off as off-putting because like typically in a Bayonetta game, you're like going through like a very small linear pathway, uncovering secrets and like making your way like to your objective. And like it's gorgeous. Like the first two games are stunning visually, but because of like the way three is designed, and because I think of budget problems, and I'm sure there were some like problems in production. Again, we don't know exactly what they are. The game does look terrible. Like that's my thing about Bayonetta 3 is that like it gameplay wise it runs incredibly smoothly. Combat is incredibly fun. It's incredibly tight, way better than 2's. But it's very noticeable in that 3 looks noticeably uglier than the first two games. Like other than Bayonetta herself, who is incredibly charming and honestly cuter than ever. I think most of the characters in this game are just ugly as sin and don't really feel like they belong in the Bayonetta universe. I feel like they really stripped down one of the core aspects, I think what made Bayonetta appealing to people, which was the extremely attractive female characters. I think Jean got a massive downgrade. I think Viola is downright hideous. I think like the alternate Bayonettas aren't like really compelling characters in their own right. Like I think in a lot of ways, like the visual quality of this game cannot be denied. It is noticeably not as good looking as the first two, especially the second. But again, that doesn't really matter much because the gameplay itself is like so good, so memorable, and so interesting for the most part. The thing about the gameplay, I'm wondering, as someone who's just played the game for the first time, I mentioned this earlier when I brought up the fact that Bayonetta 3 might not have the same replay value as one. Three has like all these really cool set pieces, all these really cool original moments where like it can go from shmup sections to excitebike sections to like rhythm game sections to like these giant kaiju fights. Like Bayonetta is just a wild, wild romp with like all these like gimmicky stages just thrown in there in the middle of the action, and they're a lot of fun. They are incredibly fun to play and fun to see. And just see all the crazy wild stuff they come up with. But I think from a hardcore action game fan perspective, someone who's going to put hundreds of hours into this stuff, this stuff might come off as a little bit off-putting, something you don't necessarily want to see, right? Because I keep hearing a lot of people bring this up in regards to like the original Bayonetta and the Wonderful 101. This idea that like a lot of these sections that like that kind of depart from the traditional gameplay. They don't really add anything. They don't really need to be there. They don't. They really ruin the pace of an otherwise like perfect action game, right? And I can kind of understand the complaint. I can kind of respect it, but at the same time, it's so much fun. Like that's the thing is that in a way, like seeing a lot of these spectacles for the first time, it just there were so many times when I was playing this where I was just like downright wowed, right? Like there were times when I was playing this where I was just downright impressed by like the sheer creativity of what they were coming up with, right? And again, it's one of the reasons why I'm so reluctant to really classify this game as like a classic or not, because I wonder if like on replays this kind of stuff will get annoying, right? I'm very curious how people are going to feel about that going forward. But the thing is, I think they're better than the sections we got in Bayonetta 1, right? I think a lot of these sections are legitimately well made and interesting and fun. Uh, the the missile stage in Bayonetta 1 and like the bike stage, Route 666, both of those were like extremely unpopular additions to like an otherwise 10 out of 10 game. Right, like most people just kind of skip them on repeat playthroughs. Nobody likes them. I don't like them. A lot of people have complained about Jean, John 4, one of the best boss fights in any game ever, being locked behind the missile stage, so you can't just go and fight her whenever you want. I I feel like I feel like three might have the same kind of problem in a lot of ways, but the thing is, like, those stages are so much better made and so much more engaging. Even the worst of them, which I think is like that one early on where like you're riding the spider, like even the very worst of them is a lot of fun and has a lot of cool, interesting moments to it. So I really don't think most people will mind all that much that there's like these these gimmicky sections. I personally really enjoyed essentially all of them, especially the rhythm game one. I was like blown away by that. I couldn't stop like grinning. I thought it was beautiful. Came out of nowhere, but again, this game like doesn't have like the graphical fidelity of what the first two games have, but I think one of the things it really makes up for, and one of the reasons I think this game sells itself, is the idea that this is a multiverse, right? Like Bayo into the multiverse, into the Bayoverse, as people are calling it, much like much like the Spider-Man movie that nobody actually saw because it was animated. So essentially, you have Bayonetta going into like alternate universes and like encountering different versions of herself. And it's really cool to see her going through like these sections of like meeting Japanese, going to Japan, going to Paris, going to like Egypt, going going to all these places and just encountering alternate versions of like all of these characters and all these like alternate histories. They are really cool and really cool, really fun to see. You just end up getting excited over what you're going to see next. And in a lot of ways I feel like the gimmick gets old like eventually, but like for the first couple of stages, for the first two at least, you get like a lot of really cool, interesting. Actually, like all of them are really good. Yeah, yeah. I don't think they get old until Paris, until you get to Paris, but like, most of them are just like incredible, well thought out, like unique locations with their own alternate histories and alternate versions of the character, and you end up like interacting with them and just going on these like wild, like nonstop like adventures with them. It's just crazy stuff. Like they throw all sorts of insane visuals at you. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to see. It's such an absolute treat to see the display of creativity and like what they come up with like these established characters. It almost makes me wonder if like they could like continue doing this in like Bayonetta 4 with like different versions of these characters. That's actually like the implication we get in this game. Actually, is that like the Bayonetta we know may not be the same one we're playing as. I don't think. I think the deep lore might go into this a little bit. I haven't gone through all of, like the lore tablets or anything yet, but like the implication I get is that like every game so far has like taken place in its own version of the multiverse that is relatively similar to one another. So yeah, again, I have no idea. Yeah, but the plot is the best it's ever been, essentially. Like, I actually cared about what was going on with these characters, usually. And that is a very big, like, usually, because, again, for like 90% of it, like, you're having a blast, like, getting into these crazy fights, these crazy situations. Characters actually die. Unlike the first two games, like you actually feel like there's a real element of risk as to what's going on. You actually feel the pressure that like the universe, the multiverse might actually come to an end if you fail here. But like the problem, I think, well, first of all, I think the alternate Bayos don't have enough like screen time to really make themselves relevant at all. I think like the concept of the metaverse, multiverse really should have sold itself, and that like all the Bayonettas should have like maybe had their own chapters all to themselves rather than like the main one just kind of like going through the plot. I don't know. I don't know. Like I'm not an action game developer. Like I'm speaking I'm thinking about this in terms of like being a novelist, right? Like I would have had like entire plot lines regarding these characters instead of just having them show up for a brief cameo and then just dying in the most brutal way possible. It's again, it's like, and I don't know. There's a reason they pull certain stunts and stuff like that. Why they did it this way, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're coming up with all these interesting locations and like concepts for like alternate versions of Bayonettas, but like you you don't do a lot with them. Like really, it almost feels like you could have in theoretically just set the game in like it just theoretically just had Bayonetta go all over the world and like go to all these locations. Like you almost don't even need these alternate versions of the character. It just feels like in some ways that like it's a missed opportunity. The multiverse concept was so interesting, and I just feel like in a lot of ways they don't do a lot with it, especially in the ending. I think the ending is probably the weakest part of the game, honestly. Again, I'm sad to say this, especially after Bayonetta 2, but like I find myself like really checking out of the plot by the time like you get to the final chapter and like fight the last handful of guys. Like, ooh, the plot twist. That ooh, the villain reveals himself. Like Jean jobs in like the most embarrassing way I think I've ever seen any character job ever. Like, holy fucking shit. What were you thinking, Sean? Like, damn, that was like complete. That was embarrassing. And what's worse is that it was all Viola's fault. But like, anyway, like this is just me like rambling about this. Yeah, I haven't talked about Viola at all. The reason for that is that she does not matter. That's one of the big takeaways from that is that like Viola, despite like her presence in like the marketing material, how like people were like saying she was going to ruin the game. Like her presence isn't really felt all that much in the game. Like she's basically Future Trunks, comes back, goes back, Jonas's alternate universe, and like informs Bayonetta, like the Witch of Genesis, the original, that like shit is going down and she has to do like very specific things in order to save the universe. The thing is though, uh, like the character just kind of drops out of the plot after that. Like she has a handful of stages, but really she's just going back through areas that Bayonetta has always already been in. Like her like she doesn't have any interesting fun boss fights of her own. Like it feels like in a lot of ways they wanted to emphasize that like she wasn't like a fully fledged witch yet. And I think that's kind of you know, very prevalent in like her combat style, in which she has significantly less moves. She only has like one demon summon. She's a lot of fun to play as. Don't get me wrong, but like it really does feel like she's kind of shoehorned in there, and that's such a shame because like she's such a fun character in a lot of ways. I just wish they did more with her. And like I wish she looked like cuter because she really does look ugly. She is downright hideous. Like compared to Bayo and Jean or how they're supposed to look like Viola just where does she get her bad looks? Like her entire family is like relatively attractive. Like it's weird that like she gets mobbed by her own mom in this game. It's like I'm not joking. Like it's embarrassing. Like Viola is just like hideous to look at, but like she's so much fun. Like she has like a lot of good moments. I love her theme music. I suck at playing as her, but I really like the character. And honestly, I feel myself let down by how the story ended in like the most Marvel-esque way possible. I really do mean that like literally in the sense where like the game seriously tries to tell you that like ooh, Viola is the new Bayonetta. Ooh, she's the Miles Morales. No, 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 no. Much like Miles Morales, Viola is never going to be Bayonetta. Like Miles Morales is never going to be Spider-Man. Like Viola, no matter what Platinum Games tries to do, is never going to replace the iconic character of their series. Like trying to push Viola in Bayonetta 4, I don't think is going to go very well, honestly. This was their shot to like make Viola like a compelling, interesting character, and they failed. They really did. I don't hate the character as much as I was like expecting to. If anything, like 90% of the time she's endearing, but towards the ending, like when it all comes to a head, like you find yourself like really feeling like the character didn't really do much, like other than tell Bayonetta like where to go and what to do. Like, oh, and Jean, where to go and what to do. And in Jean's case, it got her killed. So it's like, what? I don't know. The ending just feels like it was just. It's like they didn't know how to end like the whole multiverse saga. It's like they needed to do a reboot by Bayonetta 4, and we're just like, oh, okay, everyone dies, and that's kind of it. And Viola takes over. Well, okay, but it just doesn't feel very satisfying, honestly. Like the game does feel like it was a little rushed, honestly. Like it really does feel like they didn't come up with like a satisfying conclusion. Like they really should have just gone with like the basic ending. Like I really never got the impression that Viola, Bayonetta, and Luca were a family. Spoilers. Yeah, Viola is Bayonetta and Luca's child. Everyone knew this, but apparently people get upset when I when I bring this up on social media. But yeah, it is true. Like Bayonetta and Luca had heterosexual sex and spawned this like abomination, Viola. I don't know exactly how she turned out the way she did, but that is an epic fail on both parents' parts. Like, come on, like you, I don't understand why Viola never calls her parents by their name, like always calls them by their names. Like, you can tell she cares about Luca a lot, but never really lets on to the fact that Bayonetta is her mom at all. It's not even something she talks about like ever to anyone. She just kind of cries, "Mommy" at the end, which doesn't make sense because she's from New York. But all right, whatever. I guess Bayonetta like asked her to call her that, but whatever. Uh, like the The final boss fight, where you play as Viola, it really should have like been an establishing moment for the character, but like it really feels unnecessary. First of all, you're fighting a boss you've already fought already, like the giant like squid thing from the beginning, which is lame anyway. But then you have to like fight a shadowy Bayonetta. It just feels unnecessary. Like Viola, I think did a really good job in the ending, kind of like trying to fight the final boss. I don't know, like I feel like I don't know. The ending just doesn't do it for me. I really did not like the ending. I'm with like most. I'm with like the game journals on this one. The ending is just bad. Not for the same reason that like they're upset about it, but like I don't feel like this was the time to like give closure to these characters, right? Like if Bayonetta and Luca are going to be a thing, like let them be a thing. They don't have to die. Like come on. Like apparently they're just chilling down in hell in Inferno or something. Like because Rodon was like brought that up in the ending is that like he's still talking to Luca. Like I don't know. It's it's weird. I'm not a fan of how the game ended. I think it went on way too long. I don't think the boss fight, most of the phases of the boss were all that interesting. That bit where you're on Madama Butterfly was really really cool, but like yeah, the first like couple of phases of the boss were great, but it goes up like by the time you're like on street level, it just becomes like, okay, we're doing this really. Like even the moments where like the big wow moments at the end, where like the other Bayonetta from one and two shows up to like help out. That doesn't really do it for me. Like you can tell they like scripted that part to have like Helena Taylor come back because it just seems off-putting. It just seems off-putting to see like Jennifer Hale's voice coming from those models. Oh, by the way, Jennifer Hale does not do a bad job at all. Like the scripting is great. The actual script is fairly good, and she does like an all right delivery. But like there really was no replacing Helena Taylor. There really wasn't. I know it's like a meme to kind of make fun of her right now, and I can totally see why. But like this is a case where I really don't I really don't like the outcome of like being proven right. Honestly, my opinion, like to be completely honest with you, is that Helena Taylor would have been the better choice. I do think she would have been a better Bayonetta. I kept imagining her voice like coming through on these lines, and like a lot of them would have had a lot more weight if she um was the one delivering them. But no, we had like Hale do it, and yeah, she's not bad, but I would have preferred Helena Taylor. Like as a hardcore fan of like one, I would have preferred Helena Taylor, like being there throughout the entire game. I find I don't know the game was like the game has its like low points. No, are they even really low points though? Because like whenever I look back on like the game, like there are things I wasn't happy with. There were things I could have done better. But like at the end of the day, like I had a blast playing this. Like this was a wild ride. Some of the most fun I've had with a game like all year. Like I was not expecting this to be like my game. I wasn't even expecting this to be like in my top 10 games this year. I was expecting this to be a disaster. And I am like really taken aback by how much I enjoyed this. So this was a really good game. Like fantastic, fantastic all around. Loved every minute of it. Even like the weak aspects I talk about are like easily ignored in favor of the good stuff. I think if you're a fan of action games, this is something you absolutely should check out. Bayonetta 3 is only available on Nintendo Switch.